Hey there, horror fans! Welcome to episode 75 of Funny Book Splatter, a horror comics podcast brought to you by HorrorTalk.com. I am your host, James Ferguson. This week's guest is Joseph Oliveira, returning to the show to talk about his new project, Wendigo Wood. I have first spoken with Joseph over a year ago, early in his comics career. Since then, he's had a few successful Kickstarter campaigns to fund the release of the first 2 issues of Ghost Island and an anthology called Folk Tales of the Cryptids. He's on Kickstarter again to fund the release of the first issue of Wendigo Wood, another comic that gives me a perfect excuse to avoid the outdoors. At the time of this recording, he's got about 2 weeks left in the campaign, and he's already met his funding goals, so now it's on to stretch goals and more. Joseph can be found online at afterlightcomics.com. You can sign up for his newsletter there to receive a free PDF of Ghost Island number 1. You could also follow him on Twitter at afterlightcomics. Alright, now let's get on with the show. Here is episode 75 of Funny Book Splatter with my guest, Joseph Oliveira. I'm excited to talk to you because it's been a little while. I think the last time that we spoke, I think you were between Ghost Island 1 and 2.
That's right, yeah.
So now, you've since have you got a couple more of those. You've had like 2 or 3 other Kickstarters. So it's,
I just seen it said on the last conversation we had, last call was in May. Mm-hmm. So that's flown by.
Yeah, really. Well, it would have been May of last year then, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been a little while. So I guess why don't we start with Wendigo Wood, because that's what's on on the agenda right now. That's what the Kickstarter campaign you have going on right now. But right now, we'll definitely touch upon the other projects you got. And so why don't we start there? So if you have to describe Wendigo Wood to someone, you have to pitch them on the convention floor. How would you do that?
I'd basically just give the 1-sentence tagline, which is a retired war veteran's search for his missing daughter leads him to a forest home to the urban legend of the Wendigo.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. I mean, kind of. This is still tells itself there. It's something like that.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Joseph, I have a occasional weird echo. On my side. Do you hear that by any chance?
Is it my voice?
No, it's my voice coming in on your side. So I don't know if do you have headphones by any chance?
I'll have a quick look for you.
Sorry, I just don't want to have that makes audio hell later. So I figured if I can nip that in the bud first, that'll be better.
Okay. So I've put the headphones in. Is that a bit better?
Yeah, it sounds good. All right, I'm gonna ask to do that first question over again. We'll just kind of restart. Okay.
Mhm.
All right, so we'll start with Wendigo Wood. That's the Kickstarter campaign you have going on right now. If you had to describe that to someone, pitch it to someone on the convention floor or something like that, how would you describe the book to them?
So it's a folk horror comic, and it's about a retired war veteran's search for his missing daughter, which leads him to a forest that's home to the urban legend of the Wendigo.
Cool. The Wendigo seems like a very almost like a niche monster. I mean, like everyone knows werewolves and vampires, but I feel like Wendigo is this kind of like almost under the radar creature. How did you happen upon that as the subject of the story?
Well, I think it's funny because you say to somebody they know what the Wendigo is, but there's nothing really about the Wendigo out there, like in terms of film or comics. I did a lot of research on comics because I didn't want to retell another person's story. I don't want to, I want to do fresh and unique ideas all the time. And I was looking at comic ideas and there was nothing on the Wendigo. So I thought, I'll have a crack at that. It was coming off the back of Folk Tales of the Cryptids as well. That was another comic that I did based on cryptids, basically, from just other urban legends, which was a tale each based on one of them. And that was basically a taster for a longer form series based on like a monster feature creature series. And Wendigo was the preferred choice on that one.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, you've since we last spoke, you've been like just pumping out comics left and right. It seems like every time you deliver on one and the next one pops up. So you've been very prolific.
Yeah, I think it's all about building momentum. because I think as you're writing a comic yourself, you'll find out that you do the writing, you send the script to the artist, and then you'll wait 2-3 months, depending on the artist, colorist, and put all those things together. So it's really about having a comic just about to finish while another one's been in half production, halfway through. So we're not getting a 3-month backlog of wait for the next one, or so it's, it's hard on the money, because obviously it's all self-funded, and I put, as it's called, skin in the game, and I pay all my artists up front and on page completion. So thankfully I've got a great readership now. It's building up, and the support's been amazing on each one, so that helps a lot in terms of getting the comics funded and getting my ideas out there, basically.
Yeah, because the hope is that with each Kickstarter campaign is bigger and bigger, because you're getting these people that are coming along for the ride for each one.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like Wendigo Wood is about to be one of the most successful campaigns I've had myself. And we've got 3 weeks later, we just broke the 2K barrier and over 200 backers now. So it's been crazy, really. It's always humbling to get somebody to back your project, because every time you're about to click that Kickstarter launch button, you just don't know how it's going to go. You're just thinking, oh god, it's going to flop, or you can never predict it. So it's just it's an emotional roller coaster each time.
But I mean, you must be doing something right if you keep coming back to the platform, right?
Yeah, well, I hope so. I mean, I always deliver on the rewards. Everybody's rewards are always fulfilled all around the world. I always make sure everyone's got their package, or if it gets lost, I chase that up, and we sort things out. So I always fulfill ahead of deadlines and never fall behind on that. So hopefully, there's a bit of trust between myself and people that have read my comics now.
Yeah. So let's bouncing back to Wendigo. You mentioned that you haven't really seen much, and I out there in terms of about the Wendigo. I feel like you ever hear the movie Dog Soldiers? I don't know if that was a.
I have, yeah.
Yeah,
was
that a werewolf one, or was that Wendigo? Or am I thinking of something else? Oh no, I'm thinking of something else. I think Dog Soldiers was that. Shit, I'm totally blanking. There was I saw a movie. I saw Dog Soldiers at the same time as this other movie, and I'm totally blanking on it. But I remember specifically about there was a bunch of soldiers stranded and they started eating each other, and then that was kind of the catalyst for the Wendigo. Now, I thought it was Dog Soldiers, but now I'm no wait, that was werewolves. So I'm gonna have to rack my. What's gonna happen is 3 days from now, I'm gonna send you an email to be oh, it was this thing.
Yeah, I'll totally check that out then. Yeah, definitely. The other thing I know that the Wendigo's in is obviously, I don't know if you've heard of the game Until Dawn on PlayStation 4.
I've heard of it. Nothing but good things. Unfortunately, I when I had kids, video games kind of dropped along the wayside, so I haven't been able to really keep up on games.
Right. Yeah. But that's probably the most mainstream thing. I know Marvel might have done something on the Wendigo
they had a
as well,
character,
possibly.
But he was more of a Yeti kind of thing. Yeah.
Was it? Yeah.
I found the movie. It's called Ravenous. That's what I'm talking about. 1999.
Okay.
It had come out. So I was what the heck is this? I think it's got one of the, not Ethan Hawke or somebody like that. It might be Ethan Hawke. I have no idea. No, Guy Pearce. That's who's in it. But it's a group of soldiers kind of stranded somewhere, and they start eating each other, and then monsters ensue. But it's not the same thing that you are doing with Wendigo Wood. It sounds like in the scheme of things. But I mean, based on what you're building here between this and Ghost Island and Folktales of the Cryptids, are you kind of building your own monster universe?
I'd say more so with Folktales of the Cryptids. I think I've mentioned that, saying Folktales of the Cryptids is set in the same universe as Wendigo Wood, because they're all cryptids, basically creatures that can't be proven to exist. So yeah, it's an expansion on the creature feature kind of monster. But each story's been really popular with people like the Mothman and the other Chupacabra and stuff, and people wanted more of that. So the Wendigo has proven even probably to be the most popular as well.
That's so are you getting that feedback from like your like an email newsletter or something?
Yeah, well, I just comments on, Facebook posts. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and stuff, and people are like, "Oh my god, man, I freaking love the Wendigo!" It's like this, it's like this prolific figure that people know of and want to see more stories about. So it's such a great thing to see that this is a story people want to see as well.
So you're basically giving this monster its due, I think, by that. That's
yeah,
great.
I hope so.
It's funny because I feel like every kind of monster has had some time in the sun, or darkness, I guess, depending on the type of monster. Like, vampires had a big rise, for better or worse with things like Twilight, but then you also had a bunch of other stories that had popped up around then. Like vampires were all the rage, zombies were the big thing with The Walking Dead. And I feel like that's kind of gone along the wayside. And then I don't know that another one has kind of jumped into its place yet. Like, I think Witches came up a little bit between like Scott Snyder's book and like one or two other things, but they didn't really get the same kind of time. So I mean, now is the perfect time for another monster to kind of jump into the spotlight there.
It's the year of the Wendigo.
So how do you mentioned all these different projects that you have up in the air? So how are you sourcing out artists or keeping all these plates spinning?
A hell of a lot of work and not much sleep. So I work full time, about 40 hours a week. So whenever I get home from work, I'm either getting files back from artists with the pages coming back to me, or I'm working on a script. Basically, at this point now, I've got a few scripts logged up, so like 2 or 3 scripts. And so that frees my time up a bit then, because the artist is left to do, obviously the artwork. But basically it all comes down to time management, to have everything in place. I mean, I've got comics now scheduled. 2019's full, basically, up until then, in terms of releases. So yeah, it's really all down to time management and just really working at it and grinding at it. I don't really have a day off from it, which is not a complaint. I love it. So it's not a chore, it's a passion. So
yeah, that's well said. I mean, how do you manage all that time? So between a full-time job, presumably a family of some kind, and making a bunch of different comics that are already planned out for into the next calendar year. I'm sorry, Joe. You cut out there for just one sec. You said I heard and then it just went blank for a second.
Okay. So basically, just down to time management again. Just carving out time for each day in the week. I usually plan the week's schedule of what I want to achieve that week, and just chip away at it on each preferred day. But I really have been grinding and just really working on the scripts, and I do the lettering now as well. I'm also learning to colour. I'm colouring my next, like a brand new series that's coming in Halloween, so I'm trying to learn a whole new skill.
Wow.
In time for hopefully getting that out.
And putting and lettering and doing all these other things on the projects wasn't enough. Like you're going to get to the point where you're just going to draw the whole thing yourself.
Even going to try and learn that craft, I don't think. I'll leave it to the professionals.
Yeah, I mean, there is still that great feeling of getting art back and seeing the idea that you had in your head fully realized by the artist.
I'd say, I mean, yourself now, don't you? You're with your script. It's amazing, and it's just perfect when you have an artist as well that just gets your script and reads it and interprets it well, and then just nails the shot or the angle, the camera angle and stuff that you try and achieve. That's, I've kept working with artists that you really have that kind of relationship and familiarity with, to get your achieve what you want to achieve. Yeah.
And I think if I remember correctly, were you did you start as a filmmaker, and that was where some of the ideas had come from to build things like Ghost Island, or did I get that confused with someone else?
No, that's absolutely right. Yeah, I was a filmmaker. I was a filmmaker since I was 13, just making short films with friends and stuff, and just playing around. And then it got a bit more serious when I was 18 and 20, when I was nominated for like a Young Person's BAFTA Award. But then the full-time job took over, and then I had to start earning money. So I did that, and then just fell into the comic writing really, and just wanted to get my ideas out somehow. And then, this is definitely, a number one passion right now.
Yeah, it sounds great that you're able to just kind of adjust that goal, like not a goal, but just like the focus there of this. Well, all right, it takes, there's that Kevin Smith joke about like, I want to make a movie, give me $30 million and Ben Affleck, whereas a comic, like, especially if you're learning how to, you're already writing it, you're learning how to color it, and you can know how to letter it. You need an artist essentially just to bring that to life. So you need one other person. Like, that's doable, especially if you're going to take on everything else there.
Yeah, that was definitely another appeal of it, because when I was having short film scripts, I was having to ask friends, and then friends were too busy, and then on a short film or even a bit bigger, you have to have so many people involved: sound guy, camera guy, directing, filmmaker. I mean, the film that I was nominated for an award I actually did just myself as well. Just set up a tripod, edited it, filmed it, directed it, and all that stuff. So I've basically just took that over to comics, and it's a lot more easier, and it's a lot more, I'd say, stress-free.
Yeah, I think stress is still very much involved with it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about.
I mean, is that door still open to you? Do you think that you would look to adapt any of the comics you've created?
I'd love to. Yeah, absolutely love to. I mean, I still do, as in the filmmaking. I don't know if you've seen when I have put the trailers for the Kickstarters or promotional stuff. I have that very much like cinematic feel to them, in terms of trying to capture the mood of the comic that you're about to read or hopefully back, putting that together with music and all things like that. But the recent promo I put out for Wendigo Wood, I was working with a voice actor to try and visualize and capture what we were trying to go for with Wendigo Wood, and just adapting on that, people were like, oh, this would be really cool as a film, and maybe one day I'd like to do a short film of possibly Wendigo Wood or Ghost Island, or just like a pilot of somehow to try and adapt it. Unless a studio wants to come in and do it for me, that would be great.
Yeah, you're probably the envy of other comic book Kickstarters because of your filmmaking background. You probably make some of the best. You put some of the other ones to shame if they're just some guy sitting there in his living room explaining how he came up with an idea for a comic book, and you're able to come in here and actually put some cinematic wizardry on there.
Oh, that's fine. If somebody wants to talk to you and, to the camera and stuff, that's fine. But it's all about immersion for me, and capturing in the story, putting you in it. Yeah.
Well, so have you like a kind of stable of artists that you have been working with frequently on this kind of stuff now, like a kind of go-tos between all the different projects you have?
So fortunately, I've had Annabella Toglioni. She's the Ghost Island artist, and we're up to the 4th issue of Ghost Island now, and it's a 6-issue series. So I've been fortunate enough to, be paired with somebody that's committed to something like that. So she's been a long-term artist I've worked with, and also Adrian Manuel Garcia. He's been epic. He's really coming up on the comic scene. That he done one of the stories in Folk Tales of the Cryptids, and we're working on a brand new series that I teased before. It's coming out at Halloween. So yeah, I love working with that dude. He just captures everything, like I said, with cinematography style. As you say, if you can meet somebody like that, then keep tight hold of them.
Yeah, you keep their dance card full with this kind of stuff, it seems.
That's right. Yeah. Booking them up till 2019, so nobody else can have them.
I mean, between Wendigo Wood and Ghost Island and Folk Tales of the Cryptids, I feel like you're just providing me with like more and more reasons never to go outside. Like it's an ongoing thing where it's like, nothing good comes from going camping or going out into the woods.
I'm actually an optimist, if you can believe it. So but what I write, I don't believe in. Also, like, everything's bad or terrible in the world. I've always been attracted to horror and just like capturing atmospheres and creating tension in stories and like the feeling that anything can happen. I just love it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, do you have interest in any other genres as well, or is like horror really your bag?
I just feel like with comics, there's not enough horror comics out there. I mean, obviously, this podcast has done wonders and showing me and teaching me of new artists, doing horror and comics. But I still think it's a niche. So I want to stick to the genre of what people love. Mm-hmm. And I do horror, but like, a hybrid of, horror sci-fi or like a horror, not romance, but horror action maybe. But my stuff is kind of like horror thriller, I think, horror/drama. Mm-hmm. It's not out and out horror, so it's kind of, people can jump on a board if they're not full horror fans so I think, I'm sticking to the, dark and nature kind of stories. They appeal to me more, and I'm writing stories that I want to see, read, visualize. So, I hope, people want to see that stuff too. That's the angle I'm going for.
Well, that's the goal, right? You don't want to write something you don't like. You want to be able to write stuff that you want to see out there, or, a book that you wish was out there, and now you're making it yourself.
Exactly. That's all I do.
That's great. I guess, can you give me an idea of how many stories or comics you have in the pipeline? I'm just curious. If you have stuff all the way out into next year, like how many different plates are you spinning right now?
So in terms of comics in production, we've got Wendigo Wood's completely finished now, issue 1. Ghost Island 4 is halfway through production. That should be in late August for the Kickstarter for that. And then we've got one more issue, brand new series coming out at Halloween. Mm-hmm. That's a 4-issue miniseries. And so then into next year we're finishing off the Ghost Island series, so we'll have 5 and 6, and then we'll have possibly another 2 Wendigo Woods, and then the miniseries that's coming out at the end of the year that'll continue into 2020 kind of thing.
Wow. I admire it. Like, you're having all, it must be just a task in and of itself, keeping track of everything, but the fact that you're juggling all these different things, not only that, but paying people, and you're like the editor, marketer, writer, letterer, and soon to be colorist. So many different hats you have going on there.
Yeah, it's a very tall hat. Yeah, as I say, I'm always really busy. But I'm just, I'm just working hard at it and just want to keep making these comics and get them out to as much people as possible and keep growing. This year, for Afterlight Comics for me was all about growth and to reach more people and to keep building on the momentum we're getting. So, I'm just trying to follow in the footsteps of other, great creators, really. Like Blue Fox Comics, they're a big inspiration. I think you had Simon Beck's on the show previously.
Yeah, I mean, there is an impressive amount of horror comic creators specifically that are coming out of the UK right now. Like, it's amazing just like how many of them. I mean, it's wreaked havoc on my schedule in terms of trying to get you guys on the show, because I have to make sure that, all right, there's a 5-hour time difference, but it's worth it because of like all these different types that are coming out of there, that all kind of like, it's, I guess like you could have things like Sync from John Lee's, where it's like, all right, here's like a, very focused in like a specific town in that area, but it doesn't have to be. Like, that could translate to a completely other area. It's not like, oh, well, this isn't going to sell in the US because all these people are British. Like, it doesn't work that way. It's like, no, this is a horror story, and you can get into it because it's a horror story. And I think a lot of that translates to the work that you're doing with Afterlight, because it's like, well, here's all, like, going into the woods. Like, you can see that. Like, these wooded areas are everywhere, so it's not like something that is uniquely suited to that area. It translates like all around the world.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. I don't think I'm going to name the location of Wendigo Wood. Like I was going to set it in a country or, but that's going to be left ambiguous, I think now. So it's more, accessible and translatable to all around the world that, it could be anywhere.
It's like Springfield for The Simpsons. It could be anywhere, anywhere at all. There's no specific area for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of jumped right into this. Like I'm like I said before, like we when we last spoke, it was between, it was a little over a year ago, and it was between your first and second issues of your first series, and now you just kind of like hit the ground running. Is it just a matter of like you got one comic out, now it's like, all right, I have to tell all these other, you got like the bug, and it's like I got to tell all these different stories. I have to get all this out of my head.
Yeah, well, I think back last year between Ghost Island 1 and 2, there was a big gap. Mainly down to trying to figure out what I was doing. Just trying to figure out, the things that I'd learned, putting them into practice. And then I didn't want it just to be, Ghost Island. I was thinking, I could actually, do things in between this and not just be, all about Ghost Island. So just getting these ideas, and then I submitted to a company that's in Liverpool by me, Frisson Comics. They run a quarterly zine. It's a horror theme. Anybody can submit to it. You can submit like a monologue or a short 6-page comic script or artwork or anything. Anybody can submit to it. And they publish it, and you can print it out yourself as well and take it to Comic Cons. But they had a zine, and the theme was creature feature. And so I wrote a 6-page short script, and it was the Momo man from the Folk Tales of the Cryptids. I worked with Francesco Acuenta. He worked on the Crow comic at Alterna Comics. I worked together with him, and we submitted that, and people really like this. Keep it. I want to see more of this kind of stuff. So I got the bug of just trying to be stricter, because Ghost Island was 44 pages, and then the one after that was 35. I mean, I was getting my numbers down, but I still wasn't strict enough. So I challenged myself to write 6-page scripts, 4 stories, got those together, and then that became Folk Tales of the Cryptids, and I was like, Then the Kickstarter was obviously earlier this year, but it just got the juices flowing again, I think. Just stepping back from Ghost Island, and then doing that with Folk Tales, and it's once you pop, you can't stop. I just kept going.
Well, it's funny because you make it sound so easy. It was just like, we just did it, and it's like, but it speaks to your work ethic there, that you're able to just put your nose to the grindstone and just be like, well, it's got to get done. This is how we're going to make it. Juggle that time and just figure it out. Which it's not something that everyone can do. And it's not something that that like everyone can ultimately produce. It's like, you hear all those stories about, I'd love to be a writer, and it's like, no, like I am a writer, and this is why. And you just find the time to do that, and that's pretty great.
I was totally the same. Up until two years ago, I was like always saying, I want to do this. My iPhone notes was full of about 600 notes. Pages of things that I want to do or achieve in life and stuff like that. And it was up to about 2 years ago, I was like, I'm 26 now. I need to start doing something off this list. I was like, I'm not making any more excuses. I'm just going to get my head down and work as hard as possibly can to produce things, get things out, and be creative. Otherwise, I'm going to look back and I'm just going to regret not doing any of these things. I mean, if I wasn't doing this now, I think I'd go crazy now. I was working the full-time job and not having this, to be my outlet. Probably been in an asylum by now.
Yeah, and that's awesome. Like, that's exactly, and what's also funny is I think you were one of the first people who had reached out to me about the show, just to like not even like ask to be on it, but like to compliment the show, to be like, hey, I'm listening to this. And I was like, oh, cool, like someone's actually hearing it. Which is like a weird feeling, because like so often, even with like the reviews and stuff I write, it's like you throw them out there and just like hope for the best. But you would resound, and then it's like, oh, I click on your profile and see that you're also a writer and you have this book and here it is and all this other stuff, and then, boom, you're on the show. We're talking about this. So, it's pretty cool to see that kind of like journey of like, well, here's someone that's just starting out, and then it's like, all right, we're checking into the, the Afterlight, chronicles and seeing where you're going next. It's pretty cool.
Well, absolutely, man. Honestly, looking back then and when I was starting out and, listening to podcasts like yourself, it's what motivates me as well, listening to other people, other creators, talking about their comics and stuff. And I was like, man, I want to keep doing that and, pave my own path as well. So, yeah, you've done good work as well, man, just flying the flag for horror comics and, we're all very much appreciated.
I didn't say that to get a compliment, but it's very much appreciated.
No.
I guess when you're writing all these, like how do you structure something that's like horror is unique in the genre, especially for comics, because it's you're trying to build up scares, you're trying to capture that tension and scare the crap out of somebody in a comic that you can't really control how they're reading it or how fast they're doing it, what device they're doing it on. Is there any like method to how you go about pacing or setting up a particular story?
I usually have the idea of the beginning of a comic issue in my head and how it's going to end. So, obviously with the ending, you want it to be like a cliffhanger and, the better, hopefully the person will come back and read issue 2. But in terms of building up scares and the pacing wise, it is a difficult thing because somebody can put the comic down or you don't have their attention fully. You can't force the comic in their face and finish
Read
this whole book.
You're doing it wrong.
Yeah. Slow down. Its capabilities to capture what you want to capture, the feelings that obviously you want to portray on the pages as well, and hopefully that will come across, in the story in terms of dialogue, in terms of things like lighting. Lighting's really important in comics, seeing these things in the shadows or the whole Afterlight comics jig is stories to be read after the lights are out. So you're supposed to read in these, in the dark, and things will emerge from the page. And in terms of that, but the simple answer would be, you've got your big splash pages. I don't usually use them too much, only for like big reveals, obviously. But in terms of scares, I think that's really just down to how you're plotting the story and how you're building up the scenes with characters and where the scene's going. Is like, oh god, where's this person going in the forest, or what's around that corner, oh god, things like that. In terms of big shock pages, or I'm not really into that too much. It's all about building tension in the story.
That's my favorite kind of horror comics, when it's something kind of gets under your skin. Like I don't like this. Something's going to go wrong here. I don't know what it is just yet. Instead of just like, here's a crazy thing, it's gonna jump out and get you. Like, yeah, that has a place, but it doesn't pack as much of a punch as that kind of like slow, brooding kind of quality.
I think in Wendigo Wood, issue 1 has been like, been the biggest tension build I think I've ever done in a comic. The first 10 pages are just like, oh god, there's something unsettling is going to happen. I don't know where this is going to go. I mean, it's kind of a big twist in the first 10 pages. It's called Wendigo Wood, but things are going to happen that you're not going to expect, and from the first 10 pages, you're absolutely going to know what to expect from the rest of the series.
That's cool. And I'm sorry, you say it's a plan for a 4-issue miniseries?
This one's 6-issue. Wendigo Wood, the 4-issue miniseries is the new horror series launched at the end of the year.
Cool. I mean, this is I love it. I don't want to like dig too much into this because obviously the Kickstarter's running right now, so like you can read the first 5 pages of the book on the Kickstarter page. So that's a nice touch as well, so that way people get a taste of what they're going to buy. aside from the book itself, it looks like you have some cool rewards, like some art, some prints, and even a T-shirt and stuff. How do you decide upon what kind of additional extras and stuff to throw into a Kickstarter campaign?
It's all about keeping it simple. I've learned the hard way doing it that way. I think this is my sixth Kickstarter now, and yeah, t-shirts can be a pain sometimes, but I've whittled that down. But you know, the cover by Chris Sheehan is just too good to not turn down people to have an opportunity, you know, to have that on a t-shirt. But basically, I just keep it to prints with rewards with like the A3 giant poster or concept art. You can go crazy with them, but it's just like once you get to the post office and you're trying to post everything, it's like, ooh, you're going to need to do another campaign.
Yeah, you're going to need a new campaign just to pay for all the postage and boxes and stuff.
Absolutely. With this one, I did something interesting, I think quite unique. With you can get a copy of the signed script, which I've never done before, so that'd be cool. You know, it's kind of an insight into how I work and how I, you know, it's basically the script that the artist gets. So if anybody's interested in, you know, seeing how it all comes together, you know, you could put that side by side with the book as well, and you see how it all completes. It's very much like a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, well, that's like there's a huge audience for that process kind of thing, especially for those aspiring writers out there that are like, all right, well, I'm trying to figure this out. How does someone else do it? Like, reading scripts is such a great way to understand it, because it's like, okay, this is how this is structured. This is how these things look. This is how it, especially when you can look at the finished product like that. So you can compare the two and say, all right, this is how they got to there. You can see how all the interpretations come through, and that matters because you're able to just see all that stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I've only found it quite easier and simpler simply because I've come from a filmmaking background, so I've written scripts, and it's just been a really easy transition to comics that way, because I used to storyboard everything for the short films that I did as well. Because I describe it to the cameraman, basically, which is the artist is your cameraman. So you need to, you know, explain the story as possible, and before you get a shot when you get the artwork back and it's not how you imagined.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, my very limited experience at this point, but it's seeing it where you at least get thumbnails back first, or like sketches to say, all right, this is where this is what they're thinking. That way it kind of gets you on the trail of like, I think when I did it, I had like one small change to be like, I think this could be a little bit clearer, and then everything else was like, yeah, this is not only what I had in my mind, but it's better. So seeing an artist kind of make it, you know, take what you started with and then improve upon it is a pretty great feeling. So is that like the same kind of setup that you have with the artists that you work with? Are you kind of like continually surprised by what comes back, or is it like, all right, this is kind of in line with what I was hoping for?
Yeah, just I think because I've worked with some artists that are just consistently now, they know what I'm going for in terms of the script, and they're used to the dialogue that I use, and yeah, it's very much when I get scripts artwork back now, it's like, don't need to change anything. It's like this, you know, you've nailed it again. You know, at the beginning it was like, oh, could you change that? Could you do this? Could you do that? Yeah. But now it's just like, okay, next page, let's go.
Yeah, keep that going.
So yeah, we've got a good relationship together with the artist, so that just keeps growing. You know, each time you do an issue together, or you know, things like that. But I've been very fortunate. Every artist I've ever worked with, you know, has been top of their game. I mean, Folk Tales of the Cryptids, I worked with 12 different artists. There was a different artist for each tale and different colorist for each tale, and so that was the biggest production we've ever done.
That sounds rather intimidating to put it mildly. But it sounds like, look, I'm glad that we're able to do this like check-in, but it's like, it's almost like I don't even have to. It's just like, no, just follow him follow you guys on wherever, you know, social networks or whatever you have, and then just as the new things come out, you'll find out about them, because it's clearly like, oh, here's another one. Oh, here's another one. And even like you have a newsletter, right? You have an email newsletter for Afterlight?
Yeah, absolutely. We do like a monthly one, or every 3 weeks. You can just go into afterlightcomics.com and there's a sign up button where you can just type in your email, and then you get a free copy of Ghost Island issue 1 as well if you want to read that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's great because like some of these like kind of come. I think you give like a little bit of a heads up for the Kickstarter campaigns too, where it's like, hey, this is gonna launch in like the next week or something, and then all of a sudden it's here, and it's just like, oh, this is like I was not expecting this at all, but I'm in. Like here we go. Like this came out of this. Like that's what happened with Wendigo Wood for me. It's just like all of a sudden it's here, and I was like, oh shit, and then like I had looked at the schedule, and I'm like I haven't talked to Joseph in like forever. Like we should that was how all this came about, because I was like, he's due back. Like he's done so much in the time in a year since he was on the show originally. Like so yeah, the newsletter is definitely worth it. I went through a phase where I recognized I subscribed to too many because of like all the Kickstarter campaigns like throw in at the end in the survey like, hey, why don't you sign up for my newsletter? Do you want to do that? And I was like, sure, but I realized in hindsight, like, I haven't read your book yet. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this or not, if I want to keep following you on this journey, because if I'm kind of like so about your book, and I'm like, before I even get to it, or before I even get to a chance to read the book, I'm getting bombarded with your emails, like. So I went through and like scrapped a whole bunch of newsletters because I'm like I know you mean well, but I can't do this right now. So I've kept Afterlight because it's worth it with these kind of projects that have come up.
Cool, thank you. I was just trying campaigns. I only ever send it when it goes live, but before I ever do that, I obviously show you some behind the scenes of the production process, or what's coming up, what it's about. I don't just go scrap all that and just say, hey, there's the Kickstarter live.
yeah, that you're not gonna get much response if it's just like, buy this now.
No, totally not. You need to know what the hell it's about. It's obviously people, like you said before, people enjoy the behind the scenes process as well. And before Wendigo Wood launched, we done like the ink work and what it was about and things to come, and that'll be the continuing structure of how I do newsletters. It's important. It's an important part of the readership. It's knowing your readership and respecting them and treating them well as well.
So if you haven't signed up for the Afterlight newsletter, definitely do so. Again, you get as Joseph mentioned, you get a free copy of a PDF copy of Ghost Island #1 there. Otherwise, what's the best place that folks can find you online?
So we're on all 3 social medias, the big ones. We're on Twitter, Afterlight Comics, Instagram, Afterlight Comics again, Facebook, Afterlight Comics. Type in any of our Afterlight Comics, you'll find us on there.
And then the Wendigo Wood Kickstarter campaign still running, but when this goes up, it'll still have about 2 weeks left in the campaign. So still plenty of time, and you're like right now you're almost to the goal. You're within a few $100s, and you're over 200 backers. So it certainly everything looks good here. So, and again, you can read the first 5 pages on the Kickstarter page too. So definitely worth checking out. I mean, just from the cover art and stuff alone, it's definitely right up our alley here.
Thank you, man.
That's it then. Joseph, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with me. That kind of wraps us up then for this episode of Funny Books Splatter. I have been James Ferguson, my guest Joseph Oliveira. You've been listening to Funny Books Splatter, a horror comics podcast brought to you by HorrorTalk.com. We've been bringing you the best in horror since 2002. In addition to comics, we cover movies, TV shows, books, and video games. We've got news, reviews, guest features, interviews, unboxing videos, and much more. Be sure to sign up to Steve's Deals newsletter to increase your horror collection without breaking the bank. Check us out at HorrorTalk.com and at HorrorTalk on Twitter.